of the plan that Keweenaw Renewable Energy Coalition has put together for Houghton and Keweenaw Counties. There are a lot of really great merits to this plan, not the least of which is that to finance that would cost less than the annual amount that we're spending on the status quo to keep Presque Isle in a holding pattern. So I'd like you to help me welcome Sam Lockwood.
Thanks, Melissa. Well, I appreciate everybody coming. It's great to have Osco here. He redirected his trip on the way back to Finland to spend some time with us. It took him 14 hours to get here for the last 24, so he's a road warrior. We appreciate it very much. He's a thought leader in the field of biomass for electric, and so if there's any question about anything we propose here about getting it done, if you saw his presentation, the number of dots on that map were they've implemented either biomass electric or cogeneration. He's impressive. And I apologize for the technology problems with getting Rich Vanderveen's message across. I will ask Rich if he's comfortable with that presentation. Anybody who signed up for an email contact will give it to you. Rich now lives in Marquette. He's selling his house in King County. And so he'll be available to us, and he's a wonderful speaker, very presidential. He's much more calm, cool, and collected. I'm a volatile guy doing the science, and so they turn me loose sometimes. But I appreciate his input very much. So I had a quick conversation with Dan Crane, who's here from UPCO. We certainly appreciate UPCO being here, and any of the ATC guys. Everything we propose here has to be implemented through a collaboration with the existing grid, so we can't do what we're doing without that. So those conversations that the big developers like Rich Vanderveen are good at, those conversations are taken over by somebody with core expertise in that area. Rich very much wants to reach out to UPCO and REA and start talking about a renewable generation plan. But because of my quick conversation with Dan, I moved something to the beginning here. Craig's going to cue up a video. Here's the background on the video. It was an energy forum in Marquette, I believe on the 15th of October, and they brought Valerie Brader in successfully.
The Presque Isle power plant in Marquette must remain.
So they bring Valerie Brader. Valerie Brader is the senior policy advisor. She's also deputy counsel for Governor Snyder. I saw this clip, and we have a renewable energy coalition that was moving at a particular pace to put together plans for alternate generation for our area to combat our already high electric prices. This was a call to arms, if you will. This was throwing down the gauntlet that said, if you don't do anything, this is what is going to happen. So in any of our conversations, we start here, but I thought TV6 did such a great job that we start with this short clip.
That's the word of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. They say it's needed for power reliability. So who's paying to keep it running? Upper Michigan residents. They could be on the hook for $117 million in operating and upgrade costs.
Today, an energy forum was held in Marquette to look at the options of power generation in the UP. TV6's Escanaba Bio reporter Jessica Stevenson has the story.
Can't actually keep the lights on.
The Superior Watershed Partnership and Michigan Energy Options brought in energy experts and Governor Snyder's senior policy advisor to explain the details of the pending crisis. Valerie Brader said in order to avoid footing the Presque Isle bill, a plan must be presented that solves the reliability issue.
And that's either to build more wires to bring the more power in for farther away, or it's to have generation in the area that can provide that power.
She also explained that alternative energy sources are not feasible at this time.
It won't solve your reliability problem because solar and wind are both intermittent resources. They are when either the wind is blowing or the sun is shining.
She said if we don't devise a plan quickly and the UP pays for the operational and upgrade costs of the Presque Isle power plant, our rates could skyrocket.
Michigan could face as much as a 71% rate increase.
But these rates could vary drastically between power companies. Cloverland Electric consumers could be responsible for nearly $22 million. The average home could could see a jump of about $30 to $50 a month. Escanaba Electric customers could see a smaller rate jump.
As changes all come through, we could see an impact of about $1.2 million, which would be close to about a 9% rate increase.
Initially, it was supposed to be in effect December 1st, but the Public Service asked for nothing to be imposed while appeals are still pending. Jessica Stevenson, TV6 News, Marquette.
So Dan, to answer your question, there is a lot of misinformation out there. There's also a lot going on that is not disseminated very well from the top down. So if Valerie Brader says that, and you have an energy crisis, energy form in Marquette, only 25 days ago, we decided to do something. So they asked us for a plan. Let's give them a plan. So we've started to do that. What you're going to hear today, very succinctly, I hope, is a plan for the first 2 counties that we work on. Houghton and Keweenaw Counties. Why are we doing that? Well, it's the first 2 chapters of a Bible, a comprehensive energy strategy for the UP, given the bandwidth, the expertise of people in our coalition. This is what we were able to do this fast. But if you think about when those challenging orders were laid out, that was October 15th, I'll show you what we've accomplished in this short amount of time. Members of the coalition have already moved on from Houghton and Keweenaw counties. We're working on the other 13 counties right now. And we will have a plan, a better plan than what's on the table. There are some reasons the other plans are being suggested that are more legislative and technical than something you would come up with optimally if you're allowed to do that. But I'll try and explain the nuances of that. So, Keweenaw Renewable Energy Coalition is a 501c3. We're a nonprofit, and we're engaged in making integrated renewable energy plans for the Upper Peninsula. Okay, so to steal something from the Apollo 13 mission, Lansing, we have a problem. Well, we have the dubious distinction right now of having the 2nd highest electric rates in the U.S. UPCO and REA is actually slightly higher. Dan, I stole this right from you. As a scientist, I was referencing that. I would say personal communication. But Dan shared with us that based on amount of usage and other charges that are variable like that, in the customer base, 55,000-ish for UPCO, 21 to 28 cents. So we're 2nd highest in the U.S. right now, behind Hawaii, who pays 38 cents. That's a problem. If you take Valerie Brader's words at face value, and we go up to 71%, that's 42.75 cents. So we will be the highest in the United States. So without arguing about is she right or not, what's it actually going to be, let's do something about it that makes us energy independent. So that's what we're doing. So what do we have to do? Thinking like scientists, we got a 12-step program together, and we started out. Do we have the resources in our area to pull off a renewable plan that makes us energy independent? And believe it or not, we do. And we've got some unique assets that I'll tell you about that make us different than Lower Michigan, make us different than every other set of communities in the United States. Depending on which measure you use for wind, I use the National Renewable Energy Lab's 11-point scale. We have category 10, and I can give actual case study data for that. I've had a wind turbine on my farm in Cedar Bay for 7 years, and quite frankly, at 42 feet above the ground, 18 to 20 miles an hour, it often spins at 33 and shuts itself down. We've got incredible wind up here. Solar, the folks who are kind of hanging around in between the presentations. Germany leads the world in solar implementation. On the map, they're purple. We have twice the solar flux that they do. So, can we do it? Yes. As a matter of fact, due to long summer days and high latitudes, 5 months of the year, May, June, July, August, September, we have better solar flux than Hawaii. Lots of existing hydroelectric. And, once again, Dan was sharing some information with us. A lot of these small hydro plants sprinkled around the UP, but the aggregate amount of megawatts is quite substantial. A lot of these hydro plants were built back in the mining days, and so we have a lot of existing hydroelectric. The reason I bring that up is that A, it's not accounted for in the Stanford projections, which I'll share with you, and B, it can be used as base load. So, Dan, I'm thinking the Houghton River, the 12.2 megawatt total, whatever that station is. When you see some of our other suggested base load plants with biomass, keep that in mind. Some of these old hydro plants, which are clean, no fuel plants, we can probably co-opt those and use those for base load. Low-grade geothermal. We don't have high enough grade geothermal to make, to either have steam or make steam and spin a turbine. But for heating and cooling, underneath the copper countries, old abandoned mines, which are now flooded in the Iron Range, we have assets that sit underneath almost every community up there. And we have proof of concept for heating and cooling buildings with that water at the Keweenaw Research Center. For over 4 years, they have been heating and cooling a 12,000 square foot building by pumping up mine shaft water out of Old Baltic number 2. It comes from relatively shallow, about 300 feet. They bring it into the building, exchange it across their heat pump loops, and heat and cool that building very efficiently. So that's an asset that we keep in the back of our minds. Let's solve the electric problem first. When we talk about cooling, let's go with electric heat pumps to do our heating and cooling. And woody biomass, that was the focus of Bosco's presentation this morning. I want to pull 2 or 3 sound bites out of his talk. Number 1, do we have the fuel, or are we going to devastate our forests? When Finland started sustainably managing their forest in the 60s, when you look at what that forest stock looked like, today it's twice as big. Because when they pull out the small trees or the trees that are not growing properly, if they remove the right amount of residues out of the forest but leave the right amount still on the ground, you get a very robust forest stock unit. And so when Bosco was here for FinFest last year, he was right at the end of his trip, and we met at the Calumet Armory, and he was just dog tired, but he kept going, and I asked him, I said, well, what's it look like to you? And he says, it's pretty unruly out there. I mean, you guys are not necessarily manicuring the resource there. So we have lots of fuel, and the baseload plants that we're talking about are not going to deplete. They're going to augment what we already have, which is what everybody wants. So that was step 1. Do we have it? We do have it. The folks who are kind of here in between two, we're not the smartest guys in the world. I don't have a career in renewable energy, but the fellows at Stanford who have been doing wind, water, and solar for a completely sustainable future, how to get all your energy from wind, water, and solar by 2030. That was the first paper that came out in Scientific American. It was a real showstopper. So a lot of states who are very forward-thinking adopted the Stanford principles and have been rolling out renewables like crazy. In the interim, in 2011, they published 2 papers in energy policy, how to take the entire world off the grid by 2050. And so for the 11 terawatts of power that are needed for the world, we've got plenty of it on a small footprint too. And then last year, New York State, which is a pretty tough state to sell renewables in sometimes, they did a plan, they were commissioned to do a plan for New York State. And on the heels of that, in this past summer, they have published a plan for all 50 states. You can go to www.100.org. Stanford, in conjunction with this group called the Solutions Project. If you're interested in Montana, click on Montana. It'll give you a summary of what you have to do to take them off fossil fuels completely. So that's the science that underpins what I'm going to show you here shortly. So, using the Stanford principles, we drafted a scientific document in 17 pages, and currently it's in the hands of 6 people. Governor Snyder, who got reelected, Attorney General Bill Schuette, Valerie Brader, Senators Levin, Stabenow, and incoming Senator Gary Peters. And Amy Berglund was here this morning from Senator Levin's office, and they have had the materials for a week. Since the challenge came from them, we decided to give them a shot before we went public with this. We have not heard back from them. But what I hear from at least the Senator's office is that Carl Levin, before he leaves office here in a few months, absolutely wants this as part of his legacy to at least be part of the initial push to get this done. So he was instrumental in getting the National Historical Park done up in Calumet, and and the Quincy location too. Tom Tickenden and our commission was involved with that. Tom was in the back. So that's with the governor. Phase 2. Being trained as an emergency physician, I had a great mentor who told me, this is not hard, Sam. You say, what is it? And then you say, what am I going to do? So we know we've got the assets to do something. We know what our problem is, so what are we going to do? So in step 2, we said we have to identify the size and locations for wind, solar, biomass, and if we're going to sprinkle in the other renewables, where are you going to put them? How big are they and where are you going to put them? That's done. We're Houghton and Keweenaw Counties. So we switched our attention now to, I think in the second round, we were talking at lunch, we'll probably look at Berwick County, Iron County, and Hancock County, and get them a plan. So I believe that by the end of the year, we should cobble together a plan, a comprehensive energy strategy based on renewable generation for all the UP. That's the opening of a dialogue. So this 25-page plan is based on the science that I talked about, the market-based economics that are all in our favor, that Rich Vanderveen would have talked more in depth about if we were able to keep that connection with him. That's also with the governor's office. So, we're going to have a lot of time for questions. I did not want to stand up here for 45 minutes and berate this thing. This is the plan. It's pretty simple for the 2 counties. When I put the price tag on it, I think you really understand it's a pretty low price for energy independence. 18 megawatts is the upper limit for the size of that biomass electric plant. So Osco was commenting in his presentation, he had 10 megawatts there. It's a very modest amount of baseload electric. It is a rheostated sort of function. The governor's office, MISO, Public Service Commission are going to require a baseload plant appropriately sized for the power consumption for the area for 24/7 reliable power. So that plant will be somewhere between 10 and 18 megawatts for the 38,000 people that live in the 2 counties, all our small businesses, and whether or not some of the big users who are currently choice users, Michigan Tech main campus, Portage Life Point, and Calumet Electronics, those are our 3 big choice customers. They can buy power from whoever they like. But for everybody else, that's going to be enough. I'm going to show you how much that costs to build. Are we going to do a Gratiot County wind farm up here and turn our area into a big renewable generation farm? Absolutely not. 12 turbines gets it done. We have oversized wind by 100%, so that if we've got good wind and we've got good sun, they are pushing electrons back to the grid, and you turn the dial back down on the biomass, because that requires fuel, and that's a finite resource. So we call it renewable, but it takes a long time to grow trees. So there is no fuel. Once a turbine is built, there's no fuel. Solar, PV, you install those, there's no fuel. There's no emissions. So as long as it's cost effective to do this, this is the right way to go. So we're going to pair peaking power with our base load, 19.2 megawatts of nameplate capacity for wind, 22 megawatts is what we're proposing for commercial scale solar. Once again, that's built in 100% redundancy. We don't have economic development in the UP because our utility prices are too high. It costs too much to heat our homes. It costs too much to turn on the lights. So if you build just to what we're currently using, you're missing the boat. So let's build in the redundancy at the front end. And so if we want to recruit another DA Glass to the Houghton Air Park, the guy's not going to turn around a year later after he gets his 27.1 cent kilowatt hour electric bill and say, I'm going to cut my losses and go back to Chicago. We can recruit them and keep them here. So we built in redundancy to make the baseload generation as low as we can possibly make it, so we don't use all our woody fuel. And we built in redundancy so that we can recruit business and increase economic development in the area. So I showed some folks earlier an offshore wind farm outside of Wales in the UK. It was 32 megawatt turbines off the beach. We're doing the same thing here. We're proposing about 60 megawatts total. Okay. In economics, there's a term called opportunity cost. It's the cost to do one thing and not do the other thing. So what is the actual landscape? Who is going to get a plan implemented, rammed down our throats, a default approach? I don't know. But if we don't have an alternative plan, the cost of doing nothing is this. You saw the clip that we led with here. $117 million a year to keep PIPP open. That's $9.7 million a month. For that, what do we get? We don't get anything. We're paying to have a plant up and running for reliability. That's money wasted. She mentioned wires. That's a very technical term for transmission lines and the associated infrastructure to bring our current model, which is to buy power. Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, 4.2 cents during the week, 2.9 cents on the weekend is what we buy coal and nuclear-fired power from Green Bay and that area. By the time we gets up here, it's up 600%. That's the cost for an out-of-state generation model and a long transmission model. So, it is what it is. You don't point fingers. You get together and say, we can do it better. And I think partnering with the utility on this new generation, using existing transmission distribution is the way to go. So all our conversations will be open conversations with the utilities, because we want to do it better. We don't think that's the way to go. What are the numbers going to be? Those have been a moving target too. I've got Valerie Brader's presentation where the 71% number is, and that number for wires is $750 million. They've already done $280 million. So all those costs get passed on to our customers. They're reflected in the current 25-cent per kilowatt hour rate. And if you add that on, then you get to 71% rate increases in a hurry. Is that going to happen? MISO is only allowed to recommend to the state of Michigan. So the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator is not allowed to recommend to a state generation solutions, which is what we're doing. They can only recommend transmission solutions. So when Valerie's a little bit cagey about we can do wires for you, that's because that's all they're allowed to say. I didn't understand the nuances of that until the last few days. So call that middle line there. If we do nothing, we have a maintenance fee, $10 million a month, regardless. Lebanon and Stabbing got a stay on that. That's supposed to happen December 1st. I don't know if that motion has been approved or not. If we go to transmission upgrade ground, that will be that huge increase that she's talking about. Now here's another crazy one on the table. There are some people that think that taking an old coal-fired plant of 450 megawatts, 85% of the power generated there used to go to Cliffs Mining. But they're a choice customer. They've got a kitchen pass. They don't want to pay 25 cents. So they're a choice customer like Michigan Tech Main Campus, like 4th of July Point, like Hancock Electronics. They said, we'll buy it somewhere else, so they did. So now we have a 450 megawatt coal-fired plant sitting there with nobody to sell their power to. But because of the reliability thing, we get to pay for that. Let's talk about those numbers. Those are scary. $140 million to get an EPA compliant staying coal-fired. Converting it to a natural gas-fired electric plant, I can't get anybody to give me hard numbers, but I'm thinking $500 million. We don't have natural gas in the UP, and because of our crazy geography, we're closer to Canada and the big natural gas stores up there than we are to Minnesota, the Antrim Shale play in Michigan, Gaylord, and all that, and all the technical problems with bringing transmission across the straits. That's $1 billion, and that's been said many times. And that number's been floating around out there for about 3 years. So we don't think those are good, but that's the cost of doing nothing. That's the opportunity cost of saying, well, we don't have enough time, we don't have the people, we don't care enough, we're just going to pay it. Well, we're going to offer a solution. So Greg, let's look at those numbers. Number that we know for sure is happening is, in the absence of anything else, UP customers are going to bear the entire responsibility financially for keeping Presque Isle open so we have reliable baseload power for the UP. That's $10 million a month. Our plan, back to the previous slide, no more than 18 megawatts of a biomass plant, 12 wind turbines is the size that we discussed, 24 megawatts of solar, 22 or 24. Without the 30% federal investment tax credit, which can be accessed by any third-party developer, municipalities cannot. Without the credit, $137 million. With the credit, now Rich Vanderveen, with Energy and the other people he worked with downstate on the Gratiot County Wind Farm, that was a $450 million project, but since it's a third-party developer, they only pay 70 cents on the dollar. If you factor that in, we've got a $100 million plan. Boom. We've got investment tax credits that are set to expire or be vastly reduced in the next 2 years. So, in addition to the hard deadline on December 1st, we've got other things that we can access that all make the numbers work really well. We've got to get cracking. So, the punchline to me is the first two counties in the UP can be taken off the grid, we can lock in the price of the power with renewable, mostly no fuel options that are better for the environment, don't affect climate change. Whatever you think about any of those concepts, doesn't matter. It's cheaper, it's better. Two counties for 100 million. 13% of the UP's residents, 38,000 people. So, when I've given this talk to some insiders in the last week, they say, great, you're already thinking ahead. So what are you going to do for the rest of the UP? So the first thing I can do is tell you that this basic strategy of base load of biomass or hydro plus wind and solar is what we're going to adapt to the other counties, strategically based on geography, based on where the assets are. But when you extrapolate based on population, commercial usage, and all that, the factor that you apply to get energy independence is 7.5 to cover all 308,000 people. That's $750 million. That's assuming no advantages of economies of scale by building multiple plants, which Oscar can tell you if he's going to do 7 or consult with a developer contractor to do 7, that's certainly going to happen. So, can I go back one more time? I'll do my final point. We're going to pay $10,000 a month for maintenance on a plant that doesn't give us any power. Transmission model, $750,000. We're at the mercy of the energy prices. We're at the mercy of those prices going up. We're at the extremely vulnerable. We have 2 major lines coming from another state that the last time they got knocked down, the only radio station in the UP that was broadcasting was The Wolf, because Todd Van Dyke had a generator. That is not a good model. That is a vulnerable model for the population. And retrofitting PIPD, bringing natural gas from Canada is going to be more like $2 billion, and that will give us 75 cents an hour. So that doesn't work. 2 counties, $100 million. Development costs and other things notwithstanding, those have to be factored in. And you extrapolate that to the entire UP, and we're looking at energy independence for 3/4 of the country. Natural gas by the Stanford fellows is not even considered. Not that it doesn't burn clean, but getting in, if you look at all the life cycle costs of natural gas, they don't consider it any renewable energy model. They don't consider it sustainable. It's not a bridge fuel or anything. And I think it's good that we don't have a ready source, because then we would probably compromise and say, yeah, sure, in the short term, but we wouldn't have to look at natural gas. But I'm happy to share any of that data with you on natural gas. It's a horrible greenhouse gas, is the basic problem. So why don't I stop there? And anything I said here today is probably backed up by 20 images and all the primary scientific references. And so if you have something you want to see, tell me more about how good the wind is, or where did you get the numbers for Presque Isle, you saw the video, those sorts of things. I'm happy to share.
Who owns renewables?
Well, let me give you examples of how it's been done. I'll answer it straight up. There's an ultimate solution for the community, which is to form a municipal utility, which would then not be regulated by the Michigan Public Service Commission, and represents only the customers in the 2 counties, as we're talking about the first 2 counties. I've got lots of case studies for you on that. Then we get this built out through a 20-year power purchase agreement with someone. Okay, the developer can come in and take the tax credits, but the customer base can make a contract to buy that power for X number of years. That's extreme, but it has been done where the community and the utilities and the transmission companies couldn't get together. That's an extreme example of what could be done. A better way to do it is to make a deal with UPCO and REA, Cloverland, whomever, and perhaps get them to invest in the project at a 50% level. Build it out. Also have lower cost power entering the grid. But a key point is that right now, we know we can make power for less than 8 cents a kilowatt hour with wind and solar. We know that. Okay, wind, with our wind, we're probably going to make it for about 4 cents. A tough concept that a lot of people have is, well, UPCO is buying power right now for 4.2 cents during the week and 2.9 on the weekend. Right. But that's only a fraction of the fully burdened cost to the consumer. So it gets marked up 600% for transmission and distribution. If you pay 8 cents for your power to the generator so they can actually make a project worth developing, and you pay a prorated sum for that part of the grid that you use for transmission and distribution, and your utility is an investor, then we don't have to change much. A guy like Rich Vanderveen can come in and say, you need 22 megawatts of solar. Patriot Solar, Albion, Michigan. He's already done the largest commercial solar project in Michigan with them. They come in, they take advantage of the federal tax credits. They build out the solar arrays that we need for Houghton and Keweenaw Counties. You know how long that takes? 3 to 6 months is all. So they come in, you have a contract with them where you're paying them back, but at the end of the thing, there's an exit strategy for the community. I've heard variations on this theme, but 6 years, 8 years in, you're paying Patriot Solar for putting the development money in, leveraging the tax credit to make the whole capital cost go way down. But at the end of that life, you have a balloon payment for the value of the equipment at that time, or you own it outright. And so, in that case, we've got a wonderful story from top to bottom on solar. The Sands out in Lake Linden, Ed Fisher, before he passed away this summer, had worked with another solar company out of California, Pacific Power Renewables. And so you have a 200-acre brownfield site, no trees, great secure access to the place. Doesn't really impact the community visually, but you put a 10-megawatt facility down there. Third party comes in, they finance it themselves. You have a contract to buy the power at a particular price for 20 years. At the end of 20 years, which is still 5 years of warranty life left on that equipment, you either have a small balloon or no balloon. The community owns those assets, and after that, produces power for free. So to get into more detail, what's currently with the governor's office, that's a big chunk of solar.
Who's initially putting down the money?
Gratiot County, it's Invenergy is the company. I'll show you, all that stuff's public information in the latest MPSC filings. You can see Gratiot County, the developers and investors, where that money came from, the contract with consumers, how that whole thing works. Those are big technical documents, but the essence is the same. The third-party model is great because they access the 30% credit. Come in, you have a contract with somebody, the utility, the municipal utility, to buy that power for a period of time, at which point you buy the assets at fair market value or it's turned over to you.
Okay, so in your models, will these facilities all going to be owned by the communities, or will they be owned by the existing electric companies? Or is it going to be a mix?
I would say I would look at what Detroit Edison has done with their 890 megawatts of renewable power, of which 40 is biomass, including Lawrence Warden, but the vast majority has been wind, which is kind of what we're suggesting for the future. We have so many examples in Michigan of how to get that done that it's really, I won't say trivial, it takes time, but we have the model. We just haven't done it in the UP. Gratiot County. I'll just put a punchline on your question. Gratiot County wind is huge. That's 212 megawatts. It's $450 million. So I think your question is, well, who's going to pay for that? There are people lining up to take advantage of that. It's good business. They make money. They produce power. Up here, they're going to produce wind power for 4 cents. Yeah.
Your $137 million with capital investment, have you included the cost to upgrade the grid, either transmission or distribution system to take this power in?
In the plan, I was tasked with the capital costs. What is state-of-the-art technology? Do you have, what are the capital costs? In Rich's development model, there are 5 categories. Upfront development costs, which are wind studies, interconnection agreements, et cetera, et cetera. All that stuff you're talking about, those are significant. Let's say that you come in and I'm telling you, Dan, that I want to do 10 megawatts of solar in Atlantic Line. You tell me substation's going to have to be upgraded a little bit, the line is okay, or whatever. Those upgrades, absolutely. That's the optimization of the integrated plan. So
Is that in that number?
no, that's capital cost only.
Okay.
That's what it says, capital cost only. So what I'm leaving out is development costs. On the back end, the whole category is operating and maintenance. There are other things in the model that I hope within a couple of weeks I'll be able to give you all that. We haven't had access to Rich to fully burden that cost, but what we're doing is saying we're going to put these assets in a place that has the right resource, the right amount of wind, but at the same time is placed appropriately in proximity to substations, lines, and we hope to have those conversations that say, we only need 2 wind turbines for all of Keweenaw County, and so where would you put them if you were upcountry? Where would you put them if you were REA? So that we can minimize those costs. And that's the community aspect of this thing that Rich is much better at. So, yes.
Because those costs can and will be significant to do that.
For example, $95,000 per megawatt to do kind of the interconnection studies. So for a plan like this, you're talking about $5 million. But yes, that state-of-the-art technology that will do what we say it's going to do, those are the capital costs right there. Those costs are falling on a very, very good trajectory. But the other costs are real costs. And what I hope to do is that with some frequency, as these problems get solved and the financial model gets built out, I'll put a real number on it. It's tough operating in this somewhat ambiguous and nebulous environment because what is the true cost of building the extra transmission into the UP to continue with the old model? Is it $500 million? Is it $447 million? Is it $1.2 billion? We don't know. But I can get to a hard number a lot quicker than they can. So particularly for a small, for an integrated generation plan, this is pretty small. And so if we ask OSCO, we need a quote for a 12 megawatt baseload plant in Atlantic Mine. I'll have a quote for it. And if Rich was free, what he hoped to do today was have the solar quoted already. We had it split into 3 megawatts in Keweenaw County, the balance split between 14 and 5 in southern Houghton County. I would have a hard quote for you from Patriot Solar on that, and we would just, hopefully working with you guys, we'd say, this is the best spot for it. And it's going to cost nothing, or upgrades are going to cost X. So, yes, sir.
Is it going to cost less per kilowatt for solar and wind than it does for biomass?
The costs for wind are the lowest for renewables right now. So, they're the lowest.
It's less than biomass.
We've got, to build that plant, OSCO, we're using $3 million per megawatt before the credit. So we can't access that credit even though OSCO did building in Canada and done most of that in Finland. We're gonna introduce them to our federal 30% tax credit, which they don't have. So if you look right now and what the cost for build out is, they're all less than coal and nuclear fired and natural gas. $133 per megawatt hour, Quackenbush's latest report. average of all three that you asked me about, 74. Wind is coming down the fastest, solar next, and biomass is more stable, but it's still, I did the calculations earlier when we were sitting here, 69% of new natural gas.
So it's more expensive than renewables, but it's less expensive
Less expensive than the other base loads, but we wouldn't even do it. 10 years from now, we won't even be doing this, but right now it's an absolute requirement for that base load generation. So you can't get around it.
You're talking about the urgency of this whole thing. Best case scenario when the construction starts.
I think if we can get Lansing to join in the thing here, and actually, you know, if we had a hurricane, what we need is a hurricane, so that we can get their attention. Not that we got great attention during Katrina, but it's a crisis. And so we are trying to engage Lansing. We can solve our own problems. We can go independent. Because we have the renewable mix that we have, we can lead the country. Nobody could probably implement mine shaft geothermal, biomass, wind, solar, and hydro all at one time. Wouldn't it be great? Great for Michigan Tech, great for KRC, great for Finlandia, and great for the community. So to answer your question, it could start tomorrow. This is the reason I look like I've been working on this for 10 years is because it's plug and play. I can go get the data from NREL. It's available to the common man, and solar's modular.
So all the technology already
Absolutely.
pulled up.
And earlier they had some great questions about demand response and all these things. The Stanford guys have a list of 7 things that currently integrate intermittent sources, wind and solar, with baseload generation. So I used 3 of them in creating the model. Overbuild capacity, build storage in, and Rich didn't get to tell you about that, but right now state of the art is 2 megawatts on the back of a flatbed truck to come into an area that has a blackout and provide power until they get back up. That's state of the art. So it's all there, and it's plug and play. Yes?
So it sounds like you're looking at a power plant, one centralized biomass power plant that I'm not sure would be able to be a CHP plant because presumably something that size could not be near a city.
We've got mine shaft geothermal. So what I'm going to propose to you is that the tough part of cogeneration is district heating. Dig up the streets and get your pipes down and all that kind of stuff. We're going to propose to the Copper Country folks and the Iron Range folks mine shaft geothermal. So we take the heat out of the water that's already in the reservoir in the ground, and we don't move it very far. We only stick refrigerant loops down all, and we use heat pumps, which are electrical. So if you solve electric, then you get heating and cooling fluids. Not much. So Osco, all the big Finnish cities do cogeneration. Our geography is tough, number one, and we got a better way to do it. So that's what I'm proposing.
And where would this plant likely go?
We're going to have distributed plants. So you get increased reliability to the grid when you disperse your smaller generation. So 10 to 18 megawatts for Houghton and Keweenaw County. So take that plant, turn it, looking north towards the harbor. Okay. If we get Moss Warden back, 17 megawatts, point that southward in Berwick County, down to Iron County, which is landlocked, maybe over towards Onondaga County. Then I'll go down, we're going to take a look at Iron County, we're going to look at, not Iron County, but go east and say there are geographic clusters that we kind of look at the county level. Everybody gets a base load plant and peaking power with wind and solar. What's really interesting right now for me, what's keeping me up, is looking at the hydro where it is, and if that was repurposed, I think I've got it. I think I've got everything. So it's fun. So if you go back to that single big biomass plant in a hub and spoke model, trying to get it, we have basically the same problems we currently have with Green Bay. And Osco will tell you, you draw concentric rings around the biomass plant, and you systematically remove all the fuel. And all of a sudden, it's too far to go, which is why we leave the residue on the ground right now. It's, if you're in Mohawk and you're trying to go to Stevenson. So a hub and spoke central model doesn't work. And I think they learned that in Hancock when they tried to look at this before. So the data was there to do it the other way, but I mean, quite frankly, when those guys at Stanford, I'm not Stanford quality, so let them do it. Yes, ma'am.
I had a couple of questions about the biomass. Have you talked to the local forest industry to see if they can supply that? Because, they look at concentric circles of like maybe 50 miles out from the plant, 100 miles out. A lot of that would be in Lake Superior, so where all would they, is there the biomass out there
Well,
to supply one of these?
absolutely. So I'll answer both your questions. One, have we talked to anybody? Yes, I'll tell you who. Number two, your fuel and your generation is tied to population and usage, right? So Keweenaw County's got a ton of resources, but then we have 2,156 permanent residents. So we're covering them with the probably Southern Houghton County baseload plant. They get 2 wind turbines and 3 megawatts of solar, and that's 2.5 times what they need now. So that's room to grow. So we're not going to Keweenaw County and loading up wind turbines or taking all their biomass. So that's one way to do it. We're not real good with county managed forests in Michigan, but we had a fellow just moved to Mohawk. His name's Joe Ferris. He has ties to the area. He's been doing this for Iron County, Wisconsin for a good long while. 6,000 people down there, 174,000 acres of sustainably managed county forests. The only reason that county runs in the black is because every year, net profit, sustainable forest management, Joe puts $1.7 million back in the coffers. And so his forests look better than ours do. The entire community has a great tax base. They run in the black, they build new schools, they're doing all that kind of stuff without millage. And Joe just moved to Mohawk 2 weeks ago. So we involved him early on. I'm not the biomass expert, that's Oscar and Melissa, but they'd love to bend your ear on our assets and how we're not gonna deplete these assets, we're gonna do what Finland did, which is take a resource that's 100% 40 years ago and turn it into 200%, but also supply all the fuel you need for your heating and cooling and electric, which is pretty nice.
Well, my second question then is, how clean is biomass? Is it, we can think about the one that's downwind once, and apparently the people that live downwind of that, they would never, ever, ever put their house downwind of that biomass.
I'm glad you said it. So our example in the UP is skewed about 4 different ways. Number one, it's in our footprint, but we sell the power to other folks, so it goes out of the area. It's a retrofitted coal and then natural gas plant. They're not built that way anymore. The new fluidized bed plants and gasification plants are super clean. In Finland, where they do heat and electric together, they get 95% of the energy potential out of the wood in there. And so there's a question there that I think is hanging, and I'd love to answer. I'm a wind, water, sunlight guy. That's completely clean. Biomass sits kind of in the middle of renewables, kind of well ahead of natural gas, but it's not something you can pick in a perfect world, but it's perfectly suitable for our problem. And as I mentioned to some folks, the life cycle of this plant's going to be probably on the order of 2 decades, and hopefully then we can repurpose it still as a biomass functioning unit for something else. But the reason I feel okay saying it is that the Stanford group did not put biomass on the table until they did the plan for New York State because they were short. And they needed bridge fuel. And they won't take natural gas, but they'll take biomass. So at that point, Melissa and I and Osco, we were all much happier.
What about the smell and that? That's the problem they're having over there.
Look, if Oscar's still here, Oscar, you're not going to burn any tires at the new plant. You're not going to spew a lot of smoke. The gasification plant is very clean.
Their equipment is really old. It's not efficient for state of the art. That's the point.
But they're passing the current regulations. I mean, I don't know what they're doing, but when the regulators can't come and test their air, but they're passing it, so, but it's really, really stable.
It's a biomass plant is not sticky. It's the same as a fireplace. What comes in
okay, if you are burning tires and if they are not burned, they should not stick either. Because they are not burning properly if they are sticking. So something unburned is coming through if there's any smell coming out. So I think the main concern always that when you put CHP plant and you want to put it downtown is the noise and traffic. So those are the main concerns, and must be taken into account that if there are housing areas very close to, so then you have to put design the plan so that you can reduce the maybe coming from fans, and also they're coming might be that if the trucks unloading, so they come some noise.
What they're burning down in the Lance plant is not biomass fuel.
Oh, it's pre-sold.
Exactly, that's not biomass.
Yeah, but if they don't have enough biomass up here in the woods, are they going to stay well?
Yeah, it's creosote containing is not allowed to normal biomass plants.
That's part of the reason for us looking at biomass, because we think we do have enough.
And there's no okay, technically, I think that if there are any problems, so then it's related to the forest ownership and management, not that there is no biomass around. The biomass is around.
Oscar, what's the efficiency you're talking about for your devices? The efficiency in the burn rate, is it 40 to 90?
Combustion efficiency well over, so unburned is well below 1%. So there's even in ash there is not, it's ashes in wood is 0.5%, and when all this ash coming out, the unburned is very, very small amount. So unburned is very small. Thermal efficiency, so they are in power plant. Flue gases are in temperature of 160 degrees roughly. So there we have losses, so then it's thermal efficiency around 88. In CHP plant, so the total efficiency can be about 85. But if you are doing power only, so then you have to count the heat, and then the efficiency is around 30, 33, 35. But the combustion, so that is efficient, that's all will be controlled and burned, and there's no point to put any material which does not belong into the boiler so that keep the boiler clean and long lifetime.
And I think getting at what Sam said, that we are looking at this as a transitional measure. It's one that we hope will be phased out. As he said, when water is sold, it's what we're interested in. We're here at this point in history now. There has to be a transitional phase, and this is the plan that we've come up with to complete this transition. If there's a better solution, we would like to hear that, because we're very interested in the best solution we come.
I want to get a little more traction on the answer that I gave Dan. Dan, this is from the 25-page official plan that's only with the governor's office and the senators right now. But Rich is much better than this and I am, so he wrote this section of the report. Of all the costs you got to look at to get a project conceptualized and implemented, there they are. I spent most of my time on numbers 2 and 3. Select the state-of-the-art generation technologies, which is the focus of this plan, and their capital costs. I did those 2 things. Not to trivialize the other portions, you look at development costs, public engagement, meetings like this, pulling options and easements, wind studies, meteorology. This is mostly dictated towards wind, financial modeling, talking to the utilities, interconnection studies, ATC, MISO, interconnect agreements, upgrades to infrastructure. So
your development budget?
Our development budget? Ask me what our budget is to do steps 1 and 2.
Okay,
Diet Mountain Dew. That's it. This is being done by people with the bandwidth to do it and the time to do it. Rich can speak for himself. OSCO is here primarily because of the connection to the university and the cultural community here, and its connection with Melissa. Hopefully at some point these folks will get paid, but time is of the essence, and so I'm a retired doc. I've got business owners in the community who are getting squeezed, so that's who's doing this. We've reached out. We saw Valerie Grader telling us, if you don't do something, so we're doing something. It's hard to punch holes in the science or the implementation of this thing. This is about political and social will at this point. So we'll keep pushing until they decide to assign a task force to the UP energy crisis.
Have you looked at where the MISO nodes are in this area?
Yes, we have. The grid stuff is pretty well done. Where do you want to talk about? What do you want to talk about specifically? I can tell you from southern Houghton County on the west side, moving into Onondaga County, where you come in there, we can walk you through a map. I don't know how detailed you want to go there. Do you want to pull up that map? That's fine. So your green lines are 69 kilovolt, and if I'm getting anything wrong, the ATC, tell me. Your red triangles there are substations. So basically things are a little bit cluttered in Hancock County when you enter southern Houghton County there. You come up till you get to Mount Horse Greeley. You got substations sprinkled there, but you've got lines. And Craig and I drove the line last week to get traction on what it looks like around Mohawk, because the grid is really laid out for the old power usage by the mines, and one of the last mines operating was Omni 3 and 4, which is property that Craig owns. And so that's interesting. A lot of the places where you might stick a biomass plant or a couple of turbines or a solar array are on those mine sites that are big power users. And so I can, particularly for northern Houghton County and Keweenaw County, I can put you GPS distance from any of the assets. It's interesting what happens at Mount Horse Greeley, which is a great place for wind turbines, by the way. You only got 2. But Copper Harbor sits up there kind of in no man's land. That's the current ATC map for the grid, transmission and distribution both. It's kind of a, maybe that's why there's only 80 people that live there in the wintertime. I don't know. But not that we want increased population, but I think we want increased business development in the area. That infrastructure, to Dan's point, I mean, there should be some upgrades so that we can supply power and actually have year-round businesses. Anybody else? Well, thank you. I'm going to let Melissa have some concluding remarks, but thank you very much for your attention. It's great to have you.
Well, thank you everybody for asking great questions and having this really wonderful dialogue. I really enjoyed the day, and I think what we're going to do is do an edited version that we put on YouTube, because a lot of people couldn't be here that would have liked to. So we can open this up that way so that people can look at it and form their thoughts and continue the dialogue through social media and future events such as this. That's the plan at this point. So once again, thank you. And thank you.